Well, you better get ready for a brand new day. Chicago, what do you say? Come on now, don't be ashamed. Who's gonna win today? Everybody, come on. Singing, go Cubs go. Go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? Cubs are gonna win today. Everybody get up, come on. You're the best in the National League. This is the year and the Cubs are real. So come on down to Wrigley Field. Come on now, come on. Go Cubs go, go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? Cubs are gonna win today. Go Cubs go. Hey Chicago, what do you say? Cubs are gonna win today. Woo! All right. Yeah, go Cubs go. Top of the fourth right now. I'm watching game 2. Cubs are up 2-0. It's Friday and I am in Chicago getting ready for game 3. And you are here mentally preparing as well for whatever it is you're preparing for. Okay, Algebra 2. Yeah! Here we go. 4-9, solving polynomial inequalities. All right. So polynomial inequalities. Inequalities are, we've done ones like this where we just had x is greater than 2. And we said, okay, if we're going to graph x is greater than 2, you had 2 there, open circle at 2, and you went forward, right? So that would be if you wanted to graph just with an x is greater than 2. That's not really a polynomial, it's just a straightforward inequality. Another one we would have had would maybe be x minus 4 is less than or equal to 7. You would add the 4 over x is less than or equal to 11, and therefore you would say 11, close circle, and back to the left. Okay, now, that being said, we are going to be working with inequalities a little bit different here. Okay, so polynomial inequalities, we are going to use the concept of a sign graph, S-I-G-N, and I'll show you how we're going to use that. So it's going to say find and graph the solution set. Let's do 2 examples. T plus 1 times t minus 2 is greater than 0. Okay, now, when I look at this, this is a polynomial, because if I FOILed this out, it would be, you know, t squared minus 2t plus 1t minus 2, excuse me. So that would be a polynomial. The nice thing is it's already in factored form. So just like we did with solving polynomial equations, we set with factoring, we set it equal to 0, you factor, set each factor equal to 0. We're going to do the same thing here. So we have a 0, we have it factored, and now we're just going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Now the key with this is we're going to create a sign graph. Now the sign graph is because we're worried about, or we're wondering about, the positive and negative aspect of it. Sign meaning is it positive or is it negative? That's what we mean by a sign graph, positive or negative. So when we look at this inequality here, the key is we want everything on the left side to be greater than 0. Things that are greater than 0, we want them to be positive. Okay? So we're going to be looking for positive values on the left-hand side. So the question is, what do I plug in for t? Not so that it gives me 0, because I want it to be greater than 0, but I want values for t that'll make it positive. So what we do is we draw a graph, a line, just a number line, and then we take our zeros, so it's at -1 and at 2. Now, we know that at -1, it's going to be an open circle because it's not equal to 0 in this case. We just want it to be greater than 0. And we know at 2 it's going to be an open circle because we don't want it to be equal to 0, we just want it greater than 0. Now, with that, then, the question is, if I plugged in -1, I would get out 0. If I plug in 2, I would get out 0. On either side of this, it's going to be positive numbers or it's going to be negative numbers. And so we're going to plug in a test point. I'm going to put a little arrow here. Test point. You just pick something to the left of -1. So let's say we plug in a -3. Pick any number you want. Test point, t is -3. When you plug in a -3, I'll do it down here, you would get a -3 plus 1 times -3 minus 2. And then you're going to be curious, what are you going to get back out? Well, you would get a -2 times a -5, and you get out a +10. Make sure that's still in the video. It is. The key is that you get out a positive number. So that's all we're really worried about. We're not worried about the number 10. We're only worried about if the number 10 is positive or negative. So in this case, it's positive. Okay? Again, note, we are looking for what type of values? Values that are greater than 0. So any number to the left of -1 is going to yield a positive. Therefore, okay, we will have positive values to the left of -1, so that's what we want. Now we need to look and say, what about, okay, here between -1 and 2? So we plug in another test point. Another test point that would be easy for this, in this case, would be 0. So t equals 0. So what about 0 plus 1, 0 minus 2? So what do we get out there? We get 1 times a -2, and so we say, oh, that's -2. The values that we're going to get out, no matter if you plugged in a -0.5, 0, if you plug in 1, you're going to get out negative values in there. And then over here, we pick another test point, t equals 3. So you get 3 plus 1, 3 minus 2, we're just plugging into up here, by the way, in case you're wondering. And we get 4 times 1, so we get a 4. It's a +4, so those are positive values. Remember, the only values we want are positive, because greater than 0 are positive values. So we find and graph the solution set. So the solution set for this is t, and I'm kind of running out of room because I showed the test points. I'm going to move this up slightly and put it on this next line. The solution set would be, okay, t is less than -1 or t is greater than 2. So there's your solution set, there's your graph. Okay, this is your graph, this is your solution set. Okay? So that's a sign graph there. Now, let's do another one. And let's do one where we actually have to factor it. And we're going to go with z squared minus z minus 6 greater than 0. Okay, now, with that, it's set equal to 0, if you will, even though it's an inequality. Now we need to factor. And so we're going to put a z here, a z here. And we can ask the question, what times what gives you negative 6, added together gives you negative 1. All right, now, hopefully we're getting comfortable with factoring. And we have a negative 3 and a positive 2. So now it's in factored form. And so we're going to make a sine graph with our zeros. So negative 2, right? Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. And then 3. Now again, we want open circles because we don't want it to equal 0, we just want it to be greater than 0. And then the question is, we are looking for, if we want values to be greater than 0, we are looking for positive values there. We're looking for positive values. So let's do this. To the left of negative 2, let's start over here. Let's see if we can do a mental check. Let's say I plug in the number negative 5. Just pick something over here, negative 5. We're only worried about the sign. We're not really worried about whether it's positive or whether it's, we're worried about whether it's positive or negative. We're not worried about what the number is. So if I plug in a negative 5 minus 3 would be a negative 8. Negative 5 plus 2 is a negative 3. All I'm really worried about is that this was negative, this is negative. When you plug in a negative 5, you got out a negative and a negative, which would be a negative times a negative is a positive. You can plug in negative 10 here. Negative 10 minus 3 is negative 13, so that's a negative. Negative 10 plus 2 is negative 8, that's a negative. And negative times a negative is a positive. So any value to the left of negative 2 is going to be positive. Now, if you remember last time it went positive, negative, positive, that is going to hold true unless you see a double root. We don't see any double roots, so we know that this is going to be, okay, negative, then this is going to be positive. Now, you should double check that though, all right, with saying plug in a test point of 0. If we plug in a test point of 0, 0 minus 3 is negative, 0 plus 2 is positive, right? Because negative 3, a positive 2, a negative times a positive is a negative. Plug in a test point of 5. 5 minus 3 is 2, so that's a positive. 5 plus 2 is 7, that's a positive. A positive times a positive will give you a positive. Again, we are looking for positive values. Those were positive thinkers. Go Cubs. And now we know we only wanted the positive values, so our answer is going to be z is less than negative 2, not equal to, because if it was negative 2 equal to, it would equal 0. Or z is greater than a positive 3 there. So there's your graph. There's your answer. Okay, let's do another one. I'll give you a second there in case you haven't finished writing that down. Number 3 here, let's go ahead and do, what if I have, let's go with, what do I want? Yeah, let's go with this one. X squared plus 9 is less than or equal to 6x. All right, now, same thing as we've done before with solving equations. We need to set it equal to 0. And then we need to factor. So we take this, we take this. Now in this case it's less than or equal to 0, so that's the equals part is a little bit different. And so we say x minus minus, because this is a positive, this is a negative. And it's going to be 3 and 3. Now what's interesting is this is I mentioned it earlier about when you come across a double root. This is a double root. Let's see what happens. We are looking for, what type of values are we looking for? We are looking for, okay, negative values because it's less than or equal to. So we take our number line here. We pick the only root we have, which is 3. We know it can equal, so if I plug in a 3, I'm going to get out 0, because 3 minus 3 would be 0, in which case 0 is less than or equal to 0. That is true. Okay, check. Now, with that, let's do some test points. To the left of 3, we pick a test point of like 0. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. 0 minus 3 is negative 3. A negative and a negative would give me a positive. Now we do a test point over here. Plug in the number 4 to the right of 3. 4 minus 3 is 1, which is positive. 4 minus 3 is 1, which is positive. A positive and a positive are going to be a positive. So no matter what number you plug in, you're always going to end up with positives or positives. Except for 3, you'll end up with 0, but that's okay. Because we do want 0, right? We do want 0. So the question is, we only want negative values. So do we want any positives? No. Do we want any positives? No. We only want negativity. Okay? So if we have negativity here, and we don't want that, then the only number that works in this case is x is equal to 3. That's it. Because, okay, this is positive, we only want negative. Now, notice it didn't alternate signs. When the signs alternated, it would have been plus, minus, plus, minus, plus, minus. This went plus, plus. Okay? So, in this case, it's because it's a double group. Alright, let's get a little more hardcore in here. This is number 4. Let's make this the last example. If I go with, how hardcore do we want to get? No, this isn't too bad. X to the 4th, I mean this is really hard. Less than 7x squared. Alright, let's go ahead and set this one equal to 0. Well, not equal to, but less than 0. Now you need to factor. Go ahead and factor. Factor that. Little V8. That's what the brake is for. Hopefully you got it factored. So remember, if this is x to the 4th, that's x squared. We know we're going to have an x squared, and then we know we're going to have a minus. We're going to have a plus. You could put plus or minus, plus then minus. It's fine. Okay, and then we put, what do you want to do? Negative 9, positive 2. Alright. Is this one factorable? You bet. Crack that, break that down. X, that's a difference of squares, so it's what? Minus 3 plus 3. Now the interesting thing here is, let's make a note of this. If you were going to set each factor equal to 0, x squared plus 2 is equal to 0. You would subtract the 2, x squared is equal to negative 2. When you take the square root of that, plus or minus, can you take the square root of a negative and get out a real number? The answer is no, you can't. So, what you need to do is disregard that. That's not going to give us any zeros. It's imaginary, so we don't need to worry about it. The only thing you need to worry about are the two numbers that give you zeros, which are negative 3, right there, and then 3. Now, open or closed circle. Look over here. It's going to be open circles, because you don't want it to equal 0. And then what type of values are we looking for? We're looking for all values that will be less than 0, therefore we're looking for negative values, negativity. Alright, so let's just plug in test points. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I crossed this out, I need to be careful, kind of go back to it. If you plugged in, let's say no matter what number you plug in here, you're always going to yield a positive. Because if you plug in a negative like 7, let's say, well, a negative 7 squared will turn into a positive 49. And so 49 plus 2 is a positive. If you plugged in 0, 0 squared is 0, you get a 2 out, left with a 2, which is positive. If you plug in 5, 5 squared is 25, right? And so in which case 25 plus 2 is 27, it's positive. You can plug in negative 4, negative 1. This will always turn out to be a positive. That's why we can say, well, a positive, that's always positive. If you need to, you can put a little note there, but it's not going to change anything for us. So all we're really worried about are these two. So let's plug in a negative 4. A negative 4 minus 3 yields a negative 7, so it's a negative. A negative 4 plus 3 yields a negative 1, so a negative 7 and a negative 1 yields a positive. We fully expect, because we don't have a double root here, we expect it to alternate. Let's check it out here. If we plug in 0, 0 minus 3 is a negative, 0 plus 3 is a positive, a negative and a positive is a negative. Perfect. Let's plug in 4 here. Test point 4 minus 3 is positive, because 4 minus 3 is 1. 4 plus 3 is 7, so 1 times 7 still yields a positive. And we are only looking for which values. We only want negative because it's less than 0. Therefore, it's a rainbow. Now, when we go to do a rainbow, this is an and, so it's actually x is greater than negative 3 and less than 3. There's your answer. Okay, you know what time it is. You thought it was going to be Go Cubs Go, but how about we just do homework? I'll silently fade out. Well, not too silent.